chose to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, thought that get results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616-1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized. And when you're getting on the show, you take as little time as possible so we can accommodate as many of you as we can. But we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. Thank you all again for joining us. You can follow our live video stream on our Facebook page at Vaughan Radio and our YouTube channel on Vaughan Radio. Thank you again for joining us. Tonight, Conrad Naya Liebert, good evening.
Good evening to your hard-working staff here at Vaughan Radio. Good evening to Mr. Stanley, my colleague here, and to everyone in tune to this program by the various means possible. Webbo, once again, we gather to discuss the issues affecting the people, and it's always a pleasure for me to come and involve in the conversation. I've been realizing a lot of folks on island. I would like to say welcome. Obviously, there is a kind of boom or boost in the traveling industry, so I've seen a lot of people here on island, and I'm looking forward to see much more, knowing that it's an election season. There'll be an election coming up soon, and we expect a lot of people coming home to vote, and the Christmas season is just a short distance away. So I want to welcome everyone to our little beautiful island, and encourage your participation, and hopefully we can make a better place for us and for our children. Webbo, I'm happy to be here once again. Thank you for having me.
Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly the gracious people of Nevis. Those who listen to us on the World Wide Web, via YouTube and Facebook, as the case might be, and those throughout the Caribbean basin. Well, tonight is a night where I thought for some reason, election fever is so much in the air that we wouldn't be on, but at the same time, when you call, I answer, and as a result, I'm here to, in fact, as an obligation to disseminate information, however I regard it, to the people of St. Kitts Nevis, the wider Caribbean, and of course, indeed, by extension, the wider world. And therefore, I would go on to say that we are having an election in Nevis, and I'm not sure if the Premier had taken everything into consideration regarding the elections, due to the fact that the Evangelical or the Christian Council or both organizations would have written and asked that election should not be held around this time. But the Premier is a wise man, and I would imagine that he weighed everything and found that it is critically important to have this election held before Christmas, with the hope that there would be a residue left over the election of people being around to help to continue to boost our economy. And that may have played a major part in his decision-making process. As a result, the supervisor of election is in Nevis, or was in Nevis, and he has gone around to the various polling places based on news reaching me. Thus, it is important for us to understand that the election is of critical importance, the local election, to the Nevisian public, and more particularly the voters So the Premier made a decision. I do not know how much flack he has gotten and how much flack he would get beyond beyond this juncture. But at the same time, I think it was a wise decision, reflecting on the need of our people and especially the economy. I'll say more in a later broadcast or this broadcast.
Yes, it was his decision to have the election prior to Christmas, and a few people have met me and spoke to me about the involvement of is it the Christian Council?
Christian Council.
Christian Council and
Evangelical Association.
And the Evangelical Association, and they had such concern because it's Christmas time, and we shouldn't have an election. Sorry, but I personally doesn't really see the connection. I
don't know, Naya, by way of information, I do not think it included the Christian Council.
Okay.
They are two different organizations, and
okay.
I think, as far as I am aware, it was the Evangelical Association.
Okay,
Thanks
more
for the
specific.
correction, Webbo.
Well, thanks for that. Because sometimes I hear a lot about the Christian Council and their, the authority, and they make certain decisions and so forth. But yes, well, I feel the same. I don't really see much of a connection. Of course, people would advance the cause of religion and so forth. Being religious bodies, but at the same time, there are so much things that's happening around us which is probably not religious and probably not godly during the month of December. Maybe it can be argued it's mostly after, but a lot of things do take place. I don't really see the nexus between having an election and the whole religious framework, and to say an election would be affecting that in a negative way. Obviously, they're speaking about respect to the fact that their Savior was born in December. But let us look at the bigger picture. Let us look at the bigger picture. And I think the presence of the Savior is always around, and for those who have that respect, it's around the clock thing, around the year, around the day thing. I don't think it is particularly stronger or carry any higher religious vibe in December, I suppose. So I don't really see the nexus. I don't expect any real politician would pick up on that and to advance that in any big way. If they do, they're probably trying to get a break, asking for time, and I think the way the situation is here in Neve is the political situation. I would feel the quicker they get over with this impasse, it will be better that we can go into next year headstrong, know who we are working with and what we are working with. So I don't really see much of a disadvantage or advantage as it relates to having the election at this time, other than it will offer a new start in the new year, so to speak. I do understand the influx of people, and I think yes, the Premier was wise enough to capitalize on that. The influx of people for Christmas, and to encourage those to come earlier. Those who probably will be getting free ticket have a good chance to probably visit friends and family during the Christmas time. And so, as for me personally, I am welcoming everyone. I like to see the streets of Nevis full of visitors, especially Nevisians who live abroad, and so it's a nice feeling to see everybody at home, and most importantly, to take part in the election. A lot of people got reservation about the foreign voters, but until that change, it is what it is, and we got to deal with what the Constitution and what is is always the custom here. Basically, having voters, division voters coming from foreign. I have reservation to a great extent too, but I don't think it's the time to air these reservations. It's election time, and all who are who are registered should come and vote from anywhere and participate, and that's what I expect. I'm inviting people to take on the importance and relevance of this election, because it is, to me, energies are low, but I would encourage people to grab that opportunity and be a contributor to the political future of Nevis. That is important, Mr. Stanley.
Well, there are a lot of people obviously don't like the term foreign voters, as you would have used.
Okay.
Simply because they are all people.
Mr. Stanley, come closer to the microphone.
They've got connections here. Many own homes, property, land, as the case might be, and they've got a vested interest in what's going on in their country, and therefore they should not be left out simply because they...
Mr. Stanley, let me just interrupt you a bit and ask a question, because I keep hearing about this overseas voters and people come to vote and all sort of thing and stuff like that. One of the things I think I want to know and should be established, what is the fundamental qualification for a person to be eligible to vote? Because I hear people talking about, oh, they have property here and stuff like that. That's what was one of the same arguments that was made for to not to use as a yardstick for people being eligible to vote. Because the next thing you're going to argue, well, Naya or Webbo don't have anything, so they shouldn't be able to vote.
Well,
and you can put that sort of barrier on people, and then the next thing some people are going to argue, well, he dumb, or he old, etc., etc. So I think we should first define what is the qualification for a person to be eligible to vote. Is it once they are citizen, or is it they have to be able to have property, they have to have a stake, they have to have this, have to have that? And then once we establish that, maybe we could all agree, well, let's just make noise, but the noise wouldn't make no difference.
To be honest, Webbo, there are many categories, and people use red herrings to poo-poo those categories. And I think if the other side, whichever you want to call the other side, had been stamped out and not given the opportunity to benefit from these electors, then I could understand the argument. But it's a level playing field. It's a level playing field. And whoever has the best mousetrap, mojo, best application, the best invitation, the best strategy, then it is free for all.
So your argument therefore is that if a person is a citizen, he should be given every encouragement to vote, whether he can read, can write, whether he's old, whether he's young or what. In other words, the issue or the idea is to have people enfranchised.
Quite so. Quite so. And
okay. So if you don't you agree then that if we establish that, right, maybe we'll get the noise level down.
No matter what you do, Webbo, people would find a red herring to argue about.
Right, but it may not be that.
Because I mentioned...
So what we're trying to do, right, is to don't use red herrings that seemingly are discriminating against people who are citizens of a country, right? And we like to talk about the United States. It doesn't matter where you are. They make it easy. You can be overseas anyway. They make it easy for you to be able to exercise that franchise. I'm not saying we have to be like them, but the question I'm asking is whether or not we want the salient qualification, thank you, is to a person is a citizen. And you do everything in the ensuing laws and so on to try and get that citizen to exercise their franchise.
Quite so. But
okay, so if that is the basis, I'm saying those red herrings we wouldn't have. You agree with that?
I wouldn't agree simply because I shouldn't have red herrings. In my view, if you deny the other side, whichever side, the opportunity to bring in, then that is a major factor, a major discriminatory factor.
But you would agree,
but at the
as
same
part
time,
of the debate right now, you're bringing in one of those red herrings, because in no way, in terms of the argument, it says that any side has been denied access.
Quite true. So what I'm telling those who are bringing up red herrings,
including you,
no,
so you're just repeating what he said.
I'm saying if you give each side the same opportunity to bring in people, they have no argument.
Well, let me look some help here. But Naya, is there anywhere in the regulations or the law which says a particular side is denied a particular opportunity?
No.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Stanley.
I'm just trying to tell you that that should be the main point to be advanced for eligibility. If somebody is denied simply because that person is from the other side, whichever one you want to label the other side, then you have an argument.
But you would agree, as it is now, there is no way in the laws, electoral laws or regulations, that says that anyone is denied access to any given voter.
It's not in the regulation.
Okay, so you're just putting in a red herring just for argument's sake.
I'm saying to you, well, listen, I would like that as the main factor, just in case we have to do what is known as election reform, constitutional reform. That should be the main factor. The citizenship is quite potent as a factor, and maybe that should be the only factor.
But that's the idea. So that is the main factor, and then from that you draw up the rules and regulations and ensure that none of the rules and regulations contravenes that particular thing, and that's what we're saying. Now, having done that and having accepted that, people will always talk. So, but once you hear an argument contrary to that, you know that it will be taught that get no result. As you know, as you said, to use your term, those are just red herring. And the essence of genius still is to know what to overlook. And so in serious conversations then, you wouldn't really waste too much time on that. The other thing that I find is interesting is this. Of late, the last few elections, the same discussion always comes up about the overseas voters. And people portray what they call to be data and facts about the segment of people who vote for which side and so on and so forth. And one of the things that I find is interesting in terms of these data and facts that people are talking about, I would really like to get some of it. In 2020, these are facts. We had an election. Prior to the election, there was a lot of debate about who can win and who can't win with or without overseas voters. We had the debate here. You agree with that?
Right so.
Okay. So you know sometimes I don't say much, most times. When I realize that due to the pandemic, it seems as if the overseas voters will not come in, will not be able to come in, I said, okay, we will get some strong, hard evidence as to who can win and who cannot win without the overseas vote. The election happened in 2020, and the records are there. Right?
Quite so.
And I still hear people saying that the same group of persons who cannot win with the overseas vote, that they can win without the overseas vote, and they did win.
Again, I said earlier, the person who has the better mousetrap will always win. The person who can execute their program will always win. Execute better than the other side.
Okay.
Will always win.
So the election is about a week away. Today is the 29th. It is the 12th. So 12, you can say approximately 13 days away. Should we spend a lot of time arguing about the overseas voters who are properly registered to vote, right? And who all sides are trying to get in to vote for their party or their candidate? Should we spend a lot of time arguing about whether they should be able to or shouldn't be able to, when the law says and the evidence says and the elector and the register shows that they're on the list and they're eligible? And unless we get a surprise like we had some years ago, that when you think some folks are on the list, they are not. So should we spend a lot of time on that?
Well, because of the dynamics within our society, the time must be expended on it, on the subject matter.
Okay.
So as to bring them along. They are speaking from a position of ignorance, in my view.
So let me ask you this about the electorate, because you and I may have a different view of the electorate, because I'm not just saying it and the general public. Let me use that word. I'm not just saying it because it's election time. Those who listen and follow me will know I say it all the time. Contrary to a lot of people, I think and I know the general public is not stupid.
Quite so.
Right?
Quite so.
So if you were to tell Naya that you don't think, I don't think, Naya, that you should qualify to vote because you are not from here, you don't live here. And then in the same paragraph, I said, nonetheless, I want you to vote for me. So you think Naya is that can see through it, right?
If he is eligible, he will vote for you based on the rules, laws, as the case might be, that are set down, that are promulgated. He cannot vote for you if he is not eligible. But at the same time, there are people who will always find a red herring to see if they could woo you or convince you what you're saying doesn't make sense.
So can they convince you, Edric Stanley, with those red herrings?
No way.
So why you think they will convince other people? And that's
Simply because they do.
Yes, but they're damaging themselves.
True. So the poignant question that Webbo asked, do we have to spend any more time on this subject matter? We do. Simply because you got to keep poking the fellow in his eye to tell him, listen, I know that you know, I know that you know that he's a red herring, but yet you're trying to give it to me for me to eat it.
You know, I spend a lot of time with the people that other people don't spend a lot of time with. And I got great confidence that the people that you think sometimes don't know, and you're feeding red herring, and they will eat it. They will tell me, I studied them, you know. They think I stupid. People are not stupid.
Again, the salient point you make in terms of, do we have to spend a lot of time on it?
I got you.
Good.
Okay.
But I do believe, like contending politicians, those who are running for office, they should stay away from this matter. Really, because it can only be damaging to them. I mean, it is what it is, and that's why Webbo asked the question. I don't think we should spend much time on it, in a sense, wondering if they should or not. The law is that they can, and so any side decide to query that and to look at it in a negative way, they could be hurting themselves. They really should stay away from the issue. And you know, it's the type of issue you stay, when it's time to deal with it, you probably deal with it. But I don't think coming close to an election is a time to talk about it from any side at all, because don't expect those who are going to come to vote for you when you are saying they shouldn't be voting.
Well, if they do expect it. They do expect,
yes,
for them to
they do expect them to come to vote, even though they are saying they shouldn't be allowed to vote.
Right.
Oh well.
But at the same time, I'm not telling you the same amount, same number in terms of those who come. Some came and they know what they were told, and they know the argument that had been put forward, and as a result, or as a consequence, they weren't voted for.
Okay.
Some people, because of their
I'm kind of lost now.
because of the affiliation and emotion, they will swallow and vote the way they are told to vote. Take this issue. And I always said, this issue of a double salary was a red herring. And that side continued to propel that argument to the extent where they dug a hole and they themselves fell into that hole simply because they were warned that is not an issue. It's not an issue. Therefore, do not propel it. Ultimately, they propelled it, and the same thing that they were telling people, that's not good. They were going to get it, if you follow me clearly. The double salary issue was never a salient argument. was never an impacting argument, was never a profound argument. It was never. At the same time, that side felt that they had a good campaign issue, and they continued to propel it. Eventually, nature or God, may bring God into the picture, had it so that things, circumstances turned on a dime. Parliament had to be dissolved, a new election had to be called, and therefore they actually had to run and out the fire, the blaze that they put alight, and to come right around, full circle, to attempt to go after the same argument, same cherry that they didn't want the other side to get. They were going after it, but they had to do some in-house cleaning in order to become eligible to go after the cherry that they kept telling the other side not to pick.
The issue that you both started with, one of the issues about the church recommending, suggesting in a slight that the election should not be held. There was some debate on it, and I understand what the church pulled back or something.
I don't know who blinked.
But I think I understand that that issue has gone to rest. I understand the Evangelical Association. Our information is, I don't have, well, our information is that they did
Conferred.
Yeah, and basically suggested
Concluded.
that it was misinterpreted. So, what happens is, just like the issue we were just discussing in terms of the overseas voters, when certain things are debated on a certain level, I think people understand in terms of what happens in a structured society and responsibilities, etc., etc. So, as far as I understand it, that has been done, and so therefore the issue is no more.
Well, I'll tell you, even though it appears that the issue is no more, the remnants of the issue will still reverberate.
Yeah, Mr. Stanley, there's a quotation I read once that says, if you throw enough mud against a wall, none may stick, but it will leave an impression.
Well,
so we had the issue. It has been resolved, but there will still be lingerings, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, as we were on talking about voters and the public in terms of in the electorate, how to read them and stuff like that. And I was following the midterm elections in the United States, and there was a governor of Massachusetts who is retiring, and he is retiring, they say, at an all-time high, a record of public approval. I think over 70-something% as a governor. He is a Republican governor in a Democratic state, so to speak. In Massachusetts, is mostly a Democrat. And so he had they interviewed him and they asked him, why did you do so well in a Democratic state? And he said he ran, I think, twice before he actually won. And when he ran the first time, he lost so badly. At one of a person who criticized him. And he went home and he thought about it. And he said criticism, you know, is not always bad. And especially from people who don't like you. So he went and he analyzed it. And he said something that I wrote down. In the day of social media and all that, he said, social media is influential and noisy, but that's not where most people live. And he went and knocked on every door and talked to everybody, whether they were Republicans, Democrats, or what. And he was amazed of what people had to say. And eventually he won. And he worked with the people and kept winning. Social media is influential and noisy, but that's not where most people live. So I brought the quotation, and I'd like if you would like to make a comment on that.
That is so true, Webbo. If you don't mind, Mr. Stanley, I find that is so true. It's not that like I'm a traditional person, but I believe that just like you, Webbo, people are not silly. The masses are not foolish. And when there is an environment that demands change, change would come. The people would bring about the change. And yes, social media is influential, but also noisy, and so confusing at times, and misleading. And I believe, and I would endorse that statement to a great extent, because I'm one who believes that when the people are ready, no one can stop them. Mr. Stanley always talk about money and other things, but when the circumstances demands change, and the people are ready for it, change would come.
Well, I don't want to be misquoted, Naya. I don't think money is
No,
not the
I'm not.
only thing. The thing is that if you are truthful, to thine own self be true, and you speak from the heart, people would understand. They would read your genuinity, and they will follow and brought in line. They'll come to their senses, and if in fact do what you have asked them to do, because they could feel how genuine you are, how passionate you are. And if you are out there with a message that impacts positively on the well-being, on the welfare of people, they will follow through. There is currently the governor of Georgia who just won his seat. He has been re-elected, and based on how he has governed, there are black people who are there who said they will not vote for Warnock as a black person simply because it was Stacey Adams, the woman who ran against him for the governorship. They will not vote for her simply because the Republican governor has done a good job, and they expect him to continue to do the good job that he's doing. And therefore they voted, on the one hand, for the white governor as a black person, and didn't vote for the black lady who was the challenger. But they did vote for the senator, Warnock, in the same election. So, like I've said, if you're able to perform, and as a result, people can feel your genuinity, they will adhere, comply, follow through, and do what is necessary to re-elect you, as the case may be, or elect you. But we have seen quite a number of things, especially in the United States election, the election that is gone. And as a result, a lot as to what people were expecting didn't happen. Because, again, Dr. Oz, who was a popular figure on television, got plenty money, lived in New Jersey, but changed his state to Pennsylvania, ran against Fetterman. Fetterman, unfortunately, became ill simply because of a stroke. But he was able to recover enough to continue the election. And Fetterman was able to point out that he is a planted resident of Pennsylvania, and therefore he should not be elected. On a debate which he did very, very, very poorly, very, very poorly. Fracking was the issue. And when the issue came up and he was asked, he couldn't get out the words. But in the closing part of the debate, he had to just mumble, "I believe in fracking." And pundits felt that he was a dead duck and he wasn't going to win. But he won, simply because the people knew he was genuine and couldn't get out the words. At the same time, they forgave him for doing very poorly in that debate. And everybody thought Dr. Oz would have won. But they gave Fetterman the nod, and he became the elected representative or senator from that particular area in Pennsylvania. So, like I said, once you are tested and proven to be honest, truthful, genuine, trustworthy, and the whole 9 yards, people will follow your dictates, and they will rally to your side and ultimately elect you to office. So there are many playbooks that we could follow. Some we must not follow. And I'm saying, particularly in this election, there is a person who plays a very important role in one of the sides. But at the same time, he's baggage. I'll leave it there for now.
Well, who is that person, Mr. Stanley? I don't know who is that person. But I think the state of affairs amongst the people means a lot. You know, when a people is politically happy, they are not easily influenced otherwise. If the people are politically unhappy, then they're open to suggestion, they're open to other people's, put it, for want of a better word, invasion into their minds. And so even though, Mr. Stanley, you might be a seemingly good person and seemingly a trustworthy person, if people are politically happy, they are more difficult to get to. Okay? And so it's not just about the candidate, it's about the state of affair of the people, the surrounding circumstances of the people to a great extent. He may not be the best fellow, he may not be 100% trustworthy, but the people want a change and they are willing to take that risk. People want something different. People are fed up with what is there, and so they open up. They open up to other ideas, other interpretation, probably philosophy that maybe is not always correct or what they're on about that's going to improve their life. So, but what I'm saying, the state of affair amongst the people, their circumstances, to me, is fundamental into their reception and their openness to what is going on out there politically.
I understand that. At the same time, what makes them to be happy? What makes them happy? Maybe it's a person who is in the race, the affiliation and association. At the same time, if they have concluded in their own mind that this person is a good person, genuine person, they will rally with them. If at some point,
what make the masses happy?
If at some point the masses become disenchanted with your apparatus of governance, your mojo of governance, your application of governance, then they will do what is necessary to ensure that you're out of office. But once they are happy for what makes them happy, the candidate might know the relationship between him and the electorate, and as a result, they might just go along with the circumstance, the dynamics, the programs, the philosophy, as the case might be, with the candidate or the party. Once they become disenchanted, no matter what you do, you're not going to win them back. Especially if you've been there for a long time. There are times when people are there and they abuse the opportunity that the people have given to them. Now there are people who will, no matter how much power they're given by the people, they'll never abuse their power, but they're few and far between categorizing somebody as a good person. Few and far between. But if you're genuine, people will rally with you. They will come along and ultimately vote you in and keep you in. There are people who been in office for many, many years. I'm not talking about here in particular, but elsewhere in other jurisdictions. And they have survived over a long period of time. Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. These are genuine people. Those two are just called. Martin Luther King Jr.
What about Mr. Brantley?
Brantley is a genuine fellow in my regard.
So I don't. I thought you would have called his name first, because I know you're quite a fan and admirer of Mark Brantley.
Well, there are reasons why I categorize.
Sometimes we got to come closer to home, you know.
The Honorable Mark Brantley as whom he is. I think he's a genuine fellow. He works extremely hard, not only for his party and his supporters, but also for the general well-being of Nigerians. As a result, he is going to be there for a little while. He has no reason to mess up. He makes a decent buck, and therefore he can afford to be genuine to the less fortunate. One fellow who accosted me several weeks ago asked me, why do I continue to talk about Mark Brantley? I said, because I think, one, he's a genuine fellow. Two, he's a bright fellow. Three, he's not on his last buck. And four, he works for the people and guides his party to work for the people. As a result, in my view, he's going to be there for a little while. But as you stated, when the people are ready, no matter how good you are, based on what they feel, how they feel, they'll tell you your time is up. But at the same time, he's marching onto an older statesman, an elder statesman. Maybe in the next 10 years, he would be categorized as an elder statesman. And therefore, they might say your time is up. So, I am looking at the next 3 terms. Once he remains genuine, honest.
Next 3 term as an elected representative, or as his party being still batting for 3 terms this is him.
Yeah, all he needs to do is to guide and instruct those who are in his circle, in his cabinet. You have to be genuine, real, and help people. When people are helped, which they are doing now, they wouldn't turn their back on it. They wouldn't turn their backs on you.
Do you sometimes get people come up to you in the public and basically telling you how tough life is here on Ireland?
You don't have to come up to me and tell me how tough life is. I know how tough life is.
Here on Ireland?
Yeah, but at the same time, I will point them as to how to ease the burden of toughness. Ease the burden of life. One, I always said, if you are physically, mentally, and emotionally handicapped, then you must be given a helping hand. But able bodies must not be lazy. And if you're lazy,
Able bodies must not be given a helping hand.
Nevis is at a certain state and stage where anybody who wants a job can find a job, and the government is doing a lot in its power. If you are academically prepared, scholarships are available. If you are not academically at that level, you could be guided into a program where you are taught a trade and become a productive citizen of this nation. But if you're mentally, physically, and emotionally handicapped simply because something is not going on in your grey matter, then you should be given a lifeline and be helped to overcome those shortcomings, whether it's physical. I go to therapy because I had a dislocated shoulder.
But I would think, Mr. Stanley, that everybody needs help at times, and I would appreciate help, and helps sometimes move you from one point to the other, and at the same time, when you reach to where you ought to be or where you want to be, you can reflect and also give help onto people who needs that help. I am basically talking from almost like the Premier's experience, because I've heard him speak oftenly that how much he helps people today because he was helped along the way.
Right.
To a great extent. And so what I'm saying to you, that bright minds, intelligent people, everybody needs help at times, in going forward. But the thing is when you realize that you've been helped, you don't just go up to the top of the ladder and kick down the ladder, do you? You help people up as well.
You should.
And when one come to the people and have no fear to say, yes, I've been helped, but here am I, giving my time and my everything to help people. That's where it matters to me, in a sense.
Well, I'm saying to you, you can't be like the fellow who's on the Amazon River and dying of thirst and doesn't understand that he's sitting on a body of fresh water. And there are a lot of people who are like that. They have no vision, and therefore where there is no vision, there is no hope. People perish at the same time. I am saying to you, how could people come from another jurisdiction and are doing very well in Nevis? Let me repeat that. How come other people from other regions, Guyana, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and they're doing well because they're foreigners? The persons who live here, born here, the same opportunities are available. But if they be like the fellow who's sitting on the Amazon, a lake of fresh water, and too blind to see, too blind to engage his grey matter, to understand that he's on a lake of fresh water, put your bucket down, catch and drink, draw and drink. This is like the Lake Amazon. So many people could make a decent living here But they refuse to, simply because they want government handout. And I'm saying to those people, just change your attitude and you would recognize your altitude.
Do you think sometimes government encourage government hands out to people? I see a lot of people.
Sure, they do encourage. Sometimes at the same time, it is not a mandate given. At the same time, government does give handouts.
Well,
and it's not a foreign thing to us.
Political parties, maybe more than government, political parties, they does promise hands out, and when they get in power, they do that, and that makes me come around to public funds, how we spend public funds.
If you spend
here on Nevis, and I am not sure about in the Federation, but since the debacle of the Unity administration, it points towards how public funds are spent in such irresponsible way above the head of the masses, you know. And I find here on island, and I'm not pointing to one political party, I'm almost pointing to both of them, in the way they deal with public funds with the people who they at times give contract. You know what's interesting also? Nearly every week I buy the newspaper and there are bids for government projects being advertised in St. They say once you have a license for construction and business license and so forth, you can submit your you can make a bid on government projects. But I don't ever see something like that for Nevis. And you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't ever see that for Nevis. And I wonder sometimes if things just happen in a kind of way where people get contracts based on other criteria other than ability and of, you know, what is normally assessed, and probably based on friendship, and in doing so public funds are not seriously scrutinized.
There are times there are leakages, and in that regard, the governance of public funds, the stringent measures that are supposed to be put in place to ensure and adhere to certain scrutiny policies are not rigidly done, and consequently we see some gaping holes where
leakages.
Things could have been done better. And we will see over the period of or going forward as a nation as to how much leakage occurred. And like I said, if you put a program in place to manage public funds properly, it could be done. It could be done. Man is a master of systems, and once these leakages start, you can always find out how they started, when they started, where they started, and by whom.
It can be done, but isn't it now becomes almost like a part of our political culture where friends of the political party get the contracts, and it's a bit of slackness going on there as it relates to public funds, of course, because maybe someone else could have done the job less expensive, for less, with maybe higher quality. I'm talking about the bidding process, which I don't see it happening much here. As I say, I can be corrected, but I don't see it. I read in the newspaper government projects and bidding taking place over in St. but I don't see it happening.
You know what I find is interesting is that you're mentioning that seemingly to a greater degree they do what is right in St. Kitts. But when you listen to the people in St. Kitts, they have the same criticism and grievances about government jobs and contracts, and you know that.
Yes.
Also, but the point I want to make is to go further. And you spoke about the unity government. And also I'm going to speak about Barbados. Months before the collapse of the unity government in St. Kitts, because of my work and because of my intrigue and interest, I like to listen to a lot of different avenues and information. And in Antigua, the opposition party was touting the great success and structure and organization of the unity government in St. Kitts, and pointing out and criticizing the government in Antigua, how they were governing, and they should take a lesson from the unity government in St. Kitts. Right? And then alas, months later, it collapsed. And you know what one commentator said? If it was so great, how come all of a sudden it just collapsed? Right? But what I'm saying is that they in Antigua, they were looking on, they were probably listening to certain reports by certain people or reading certain information, and that is the picture, and so that is what it was to them.
That's good.
Also remember what happened in Barbados when Mayor Motley had to call a snap election because she got a tip-off. She was about to face a motion of no confidence from her own party. But she moved a political strategy and she moved ahead. But our people here and in other areas, we're talking about how great she is in terms of governance and Barbados and all sort of thing. So I just find that fascinating, and I just put that in just as part of the discussion. By the way, let me get a break and then we'll come back. If you would like to join in the conversation, this is the election coming up in a couple of days, and I want to perhaps focus on that and ask, is it a matter we're hearing from the political parties and the candidates and maybe supporters? Are they just shouting at each other, or are they talking about good debates about the issues? We'll be back right after these.
Builders Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builders Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builders Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builders Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts, or call them at 466-4938.
From the Caribbean's powerhouse.
Merry Christmas from all of us to you. Merry Christmas.
Back on this episode of Talk That Get Results with Conrad Nye Liebert, Edric W. Stanley. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. So, the parties involved, the candidates, supporters shouting at each other, or are we hearing various issues?
Well, we are hearing various issues coming from both parties. It's just that...
Such as what?
Well, I listened to the leader of the opposition, and it was interesting in listening to her as to how she attempted to put aside differences and attempting to hone in on what she sees as not going right. At the same time, it was good for my hearing, my analyzing, and my concluding that based on what I heard from the other side, based on their record of accomplishments, it's a uphill climb for her and her party to unseat the incumbents. At the same time, the incumbents are saying those are promises we have delivered, and give us 5 more years. No, it's only fair, right, and proper for them to be given another 5 years based on their performance. Do you chance it with a party that promises? Now, if those fellows were to stumble, falter, which ultimately would bring on failure, then you have to have people with the critical vision, foresight, to see exactly where they stumble, when they stumble, where they faltered, how they faltered, and to give the other side a chance. But if they are going along, galloping, and not stumbling, going along, performing, and not faltering, it's only fair, right, and proper for them to be given another term. Now, if for some reason a certain portion of the electorate feels that the people in office, the incumbents, are doing a snow job, you should have the capacity and the ability to be able to identify and to conclude, show physically or theoretically or both that they have faltered.
Yeah, but Mr. Stanley and Naya as well, the question I was asked, or what I was seeking to find out, is not a hypothetical situation. We are 13 days away from the election, and I was asking whether or not we've been hearing the campaigns of all sides, and based on what you've been hearing, what have you assessed? And you mentioned something, and then I said, for instance, like what? Right? And that is, you know, I understand what you're saying in that, okay, if you have an opposition and then you have a government in and they have a record, and if they perform well and so on, and then if the opposition promise something and so on and so forth. But that's a hypothetical stuff. I'm saying, have you been hearing the incumbents say, we have performed, we have done this with electricity, we have done this with so and so, and then the opposition has said that you haven't done that, we can do that, and this is how we will get it done. They spent 5 million here. Our people, we have figures and so on and so forth. This would have cost 4.5, etc., etc. I mean, I'm talking about that kind of debate. Are we hearing that?
Well, that is coming through but it is filtered from the opposition. The incumbents, they've got figures, and the opposition obviously would dispute those figures in harsh terms simply because they want to get in. But like I mentioned, you mentioned hypothetically. One is a hypothetical, the other is reality. The incumbent has a real performance mandate. It is there to be seen. The hypothetical portion that you brought in is based on what the opposition said. Now, I have not been privy to hard numbers on specific areas such as the hospital, such as Nevlek, and the whole 9 yards, the roads, because they may not, I said, have the hard numbers as the government or the incumbents do. At the same time, they are hypothetically making promises. Should the electorate trust the promises they're making? But like I said, you have to look to see where they stumble, how they stumble, where they falter, when they faltered, and categorized it and bring it to the fore.
Okay, now the same question.
Well, the incumbent, the island administration, they are running on their records. Obviously, I tune into one or two meetings, and it's all about what they've been doing and highlighting their achievements over the last 5 years. Listening to them, they seems to be saying quite a lot. Because, as we live in Nevis, we are not detailing what the government is doing, even though we might unconsciously or consciously say, well, things are going good or things are going not too good. But when you listen to the government, they have a lot to say as it relates to their records, the things they have achieved over the last 5 years. The opposition in some areas are proposing a different kind of for instance, in tourism, they want to go more along the green path with tourism, and that is interesting. That's always Dr. Daniel's mouthpiece, to use that term. She speak well in that regards, green energy and so forth. Outside that, we've been hearing talk of corruption. That's a very wide term, and usually we hear that in almost every opposition, on almost every opposition platform around the world and locally. And so to point out that, I think that would be something of concern. But to vaguely speak of corruption, they have to be more convincing in that regard.
Okay, let me take this, Naya. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good night, Webbo.
Yes.
I'm good night to your panelist here. Well, this medical marijuana thing, right? It wouldn't got to be some expert coming if we want to do our medical and show us how to do it. Because I can't on different radio program and talk about we ain't have no factory here to do a medical whatever, right? So I was asking the panelists then if we're going to go the marijuana here and ship it where, break it down to something whatever, and then send it just like we to do our sugar. Let's look used to make our sugar and send it to England. This is it, because we ain't have nothing here medically to say that we could try it out and start to make money. You understand? So I want to know that if you can bring in some export, and then they will do whatever, and then ship out the medical or the medical use to send the country to in the Federation. I think it's a Nevis for me to use. All right, then I will listen to the rest of the.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and of course also, I've been made to understand that the opposition have some concern about the electoral office and the way the electoral office is run. Again, opposition always have that concern, sometimes genuine, sometimes, not genuinely so. I understand that Kitishans have been invited over to run or to play an active role in the upcoming election. I understand members of the opposition has been promulgating that, hoping or wishing or thinking that Kitishan can come over, and that is troubling. It sounds like from the the Allen administration point of view. I think it's troubling also. And so, but the hard issues, Webbo, you see, one of the things that's going on here, we don't have a conversation really and truly. I find that the opposition party and its followers doesn't seem to give a good ear to the government, and vice versa. And so there's this big gap in between both of them, and it's hard to really bring the issues together. They're basically not discussing issues in terms of debating issues, but almost like shouting across the platform to each other. And some, of course, the Facebook is the platforms has been used in a big way, to me quite destructive. And so it's not an election where issues, bread and butter issues, or issues that affect the life of people, seems to be uppermost in the minds of people. It's almost personalities and so forth. And that is unfortunate, Webbo. That's very unfortunate. As I asked Mr. Stanley, why we can't simply have a debate? I mean, that's something that, of course, the public then would get a straight up indication as to what is planned by either party, what are the issues and how they view these issues, the back and the forth, and the pros and the cons and so forth. But to me, if there's a debate, it's very isolated in both camps, and the public just cannot get a good perception of real opinions coming from both sides on particular issues.
Well, that is your job, to bring them together. At the same time, if you have not tried, then you may have faltered. But if you have tried and you have not gotten them together, I still can't fault you. I could remember the election in Arizona between the two ladies governor vying for governorship, and one was set up by Trump, and she was hot like fire, and the other was there calm and cool as if she was a cucumber. She never debated the one who was out there hyper, and she took her strides and placed her blows, however, and vanquished the one who was hot like fire, propelled by Trump. Now, again, it is for you to bring them together. And if for some reason the government does not feel that they're up to speed to be on a platform or on a forum that is conducive to the general public's education. It's not going to happen. So you have to tell us whether or not you tried and failed or faulted, or you have not tried at all. At the same time, let me just reiterate, if the government feels for some reason that they're not up to speed to be brought onto the same forum, it's not going to happen.
You see, what I've been doing, it is almost like when people do surveys. So what I've been doing with you two is trying to get from you that as you listen to the various parties and candidates 13 days away from the election, was trying to find out from you, has anything been stuck? Has anything stuck with you in terms of a big issue that is being addressed? Right? Well, you put me in the mix of it, Edric, and you know that I like to, on behalf of the public, ask certain questions of all the candidates, and all of them are always welcome to come here. You know, some come and some don't come, and so on and so forth. But it's always interesting to hear what people have to say, and whether or not people can defend. And that's what a good debate is all about, whether you can defend. A fellow accosted me one time and says, you know, Webbo, one thing with you, you don't give up on your point easy. And I say, I don't make get in the ring that easy. What I do, I make research and stuff like that. And if I bring something to the fore, it's well researched. And then, if I'm in the ring and if I'm debating and you beat me, I concede. But why should one concede if they're not beaten? And always remember,
Quite so.
do not bring a case if you know it's weak. And so I don't. So if you, because I remember early in the first go around the federal election, remember the debate about this monies, and sometimes we couldn't keep count. One time it was 250, another time 3, 4, 5, it's and so forth. Okay. So everybody's saying it was wasted, how it was spent. Mr. Brantley, how did you spend it? Oh, this. Oh, but I still don't want to hear it, still ain't satisfied. You don't debate like that. That's not what I call a debate. That's what I call making noise and cussing. So, still, one more time, have you 13 days away? I've been listening. I will be able to tell the public. Let me get this call. Maybe this caller. Good evening. Thank you for holding. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hello. Good night.
Yes. So I was making the point, right, that let us hear, and people want to know what have you heard, right? Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo and the panelists there. Carl Brown here from Fountain and Sinkit.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Talking about debate, you're not going to get the issues and topics put out there because the candidates them don't debate each other. It's only in the Caribbean here I don't see that happening. You have the opposition, the different opposition, independent, everything, going on podium saying what is going on radio, internet saying what they want. You have the government doing the same thing, saying what they want, but yet none of them would put their heads together and say, let us go on national TV, let us have a person ask us a number of questions and we have a debate thing. You think Dr. Daniel would ever debate the Honorable Mark Brantley? Never. We ain't gonna see it happening in lifetime. You think the other candidates then will debate Jeffers and Evelyn and those others? we ain't gonna see that.
Why?
Why?
Eh?
Why?
Because when it comes to election, it's a war. You have your side, I have my side. And I do and say what I want on my side. The same thing with your side. Is who the voters, is who could convince the most voters to listen and to observe what we're saying. But if you have national debate, down here in St. Kitts, for many years, I tell them, let us go to Warner Park and have a debate with all of the candidates. We start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, invite the general public to sit in the stands, and you put the podium up there, the stage where all the candidates running in the election will debate each other.
So you start at and you start at 3 o'clock, you said?
You start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because what is going to happen, you're going, by that time most people don't work and come in for more. So the stadium will pack.
Yeah, but work with me. You're starting at 3 o'clock. What time you'll finish?
Well, it depends on how the debate and the question them go. We could say 3 to 10.
Okay.
That will be fine. I mean, could you imagine that NRP and in your party and CCM in Grove Park debating each other live on national TV, internet and all kind of things?
So you go from 3 and as you said, maybe you could go till 10, but if it is intriguing enough, you could go till 3 too?
If you get enough.
You go till 3?
3 to 3, no man.
Yeah, okay, but I just check in.
Not only that, you would have the opposition them all over the world. It's one song all of them does be singing. It's one song but they just singing different verses in the same song. Corruption, money overspent, project overrun.
But caller, let me ask you this, because I think one of the panel mentioned it. Do you not think that the electorate is already up to that?
Yes, and I keep saying to the opposition in Nevis, change oil motive. The game that they come in with is a losing game, and they're not saying. I keep telling them, why every election, a local election, a federal election, you all have new candidates. You cannot get no base, so. You cannot win no election, so. Right? Because the people have to know the candidate. The candidates have to put a foundation in the constituency and the community so people could be well abreast of that candidate.
You've been following, it seems, what's happening for this election coming up?
Yeah.
And
the opposition have totally brand new candidates except 1 or 2. The federal election they had brand new candidates, and this been going on for years. And they keep getting whipped, and people being advising them, people being talking to them on the talk shows. Change that system, it's not going to work. Otherwise you're going to be in the opposition wilderness probably forever. That system where they have federal, they got new candidates, local, they got new candidates, that's not going to convince voters. And up to now, and they keep changing the leaders, oh my Lord, the amount of leaders they have done that in the last couple of years. They got to get a foundation, they got to get a base, they got to get a system that is going to work. The system that they haven't, in them, lose.
Okay.
Gone, guys.
Okay, all right.
Well, I've said while we were off the air that it is not really possible to have the same forum with the Honorable Dr. Mark Grantley and Dr. Janice Hodge, simply because the Honorable Mark Grantley may not want to elevate Dr. Janice Hodge to the extent at the level at which he's now performing. And consequently, you may not get a debate with both of them on the same platform.
Yeah, I
understand that.
You look. It's a long time you haven't disconnected me, and you thought maybe you will disconnect me now.
Well, let me just
reconnect me.
listen.
I'm doing that.
It is very likely that you're not going to get a debate from these two leaders simply because one might feel that he's at this level and the other must not be brought to the same level.
I understand.
I brought the case in Arizona just to profess my point.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo.
Yes.
Webbo, the debate you're talking about is already in the public square. It seems to me like all we have to do is to bring it to the table. I could give you two questions that you could use for the move. Where the money gone? The proposals could be the NRP because that's their question. And you could have the CCM on the other end responding. Throw it out there. Let's hear the response from the leaders. The public will be interested in hearing that. The other thing I would like to hear about that is in the public square is this pencil brand issue. Let them ask the question and have somebody to answer. And I think if we throw that out and you look, give the public an opportunity to see who going to bounce and who going to hook. Because some people feel that just asking shooting out there in the open is all right. Let us bring it to the table so that when you ask the question, you could get an answer. And if you get an answer, you don't have you don't need to duck. You get the answer, just satisfy yourself. I've asked some people, okay, they have chronicled what they have done. What do you think about it? They go around the bush. So let's hear them. Let's hear them. Bring them to the table. Invite them and let's see who accept and who duck. What do you think about that?
Well, let's see.
Throw out the invitation.
Yes.
Let me see who duck.
Okay, caller.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got
Thank
you. Yes.
Bye-bye.
I find that the public is being shortchanged. It's very difficult, Webbo, to follow through and to really be fed with any positivity in this. It's almost like argument.
But now let me ask you this: you don't think is a society that we have? You just hold. Let me take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, it is.
Good evening, Mr. Weber and your panel. Pleasant evening to all of you there. Listening to Mr. Stanley making a point about we can't get a debate with Mr. Brantley and the opposition leader. I don't know what in the world Mr. Stanley is talking about, because that's how people listen to the issues and listen to how each candidate are planning to govern if either one is elected. In America, in England, elsewhere, they do have debates. Everywhere you go, they do have debates. Why we can't have debates in either? Why? What is Mr. Stanley talking about? You can't have a debate and some crazy explanation there. Debates are what people want to hear. Debate the issues, not personal attacks and talking childish stuff. Debate the issues. Why we can't have a debate with Mr. Brantley and the opposition leader? The candidates. I believe that's something needed to have on the books. I think it's to have debates with NRP versus the candidates for CCM.
Caller,
Let's see the issues.
might I ask, and I just asked Naya the question just before we got you in. You think part of it is because of who we are as a people in this society? We might make noise, complain, but we don't really want it?
That's true. I remember, I think the last election, I saw a young man in Nevis as a lone ranger with a placard in the street saying, we need debate. Young man. I think that was one of the most sensible young men I've seen with a placard. He was asking for debate. A young man asking for debate. No one else is asking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that should be something on the books. Let us hear the issues. Most times when I listen to these candidates on the campaign trail, it's personal attacks, petty stuff, childish stuff, debate issues. Stop the person. I just listened to the system in the NRP. It's personal attacks, personal attacks. Stop it. Let's debate issues. Grow up and debate issues. Tell me how you're going to govern.
So then your answer to the question, notwithstanding, we are requesting this. The society you're suggesting, seemingly though, they are being given what they want.
I don't know if they're giving what they want. The people have to demand certain stuff, as Naya was saying there just before I called.
Mm-hmm.
The people have to demand certain stuff.
Well,
stop just accept anything that's given to you. Demand certain stuff.
Okay. All right. I got you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, you're on the air.
Hello.
You're on the air.
Yes. Good evening. I was listening to the caller and they were saying that the two parties should have a debate. I think that is a very good idea, but at the end of it all, sometimes people from like the opposition, they don't know how to have a proper debate. So most times you'll end up having a conversation or everybody sounds like a fish market because one person is trying to talk over the other. And I could honestly say I have been to a CCM meeting that was here a few weeks ago, and the Honorable was making a statement, and people were asking questions, and NRP supporter got up and said, you lie, that's not true. So I'm saying I don't even know how a debate can happen when they won't be able to because of, whatever political differences.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Well, I preferred my statement.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, good evening, Webbo and panel. This subject about debate has been around for a very, very long time. And the bottom line is that the candidates or whoever we are expecting to have the debate, they don't want it. They don't show up. I think last year, sometime recently, I heard one of the leaders say, they're not going to, create a platform for the other person to come and speak on it. And he refused to have a debate. And it has been going on for a very long time, since before, Denzel Douglas sometimes been asking for debates. The leaders, I don't think they ever came and settled down for a debate.
That's not true. That, caller, by way of information, that is not true.
Okay, good.
I had a debate here at Vaughan Radio, and maybe one of these days I'll just play it for the public who were not around then to hear. Dr. Denzel Douglas, and then Prime Minister Simmons at the time, and there was Powell, who had a party by the name of UPP. And then I had a debate between Douglas and I had an interview with Douglas by himself, Grant by himself, Simmons by himself, etc., etc., etc. So I don't know why people keep peddling these things, and people who say it, they know that is not true.
A debate with one person?
I said I had a debate with Dr. Douglas, Dr. Simmons, and the UPP candidate Michael Powell. Those are 3 persons.
Well, I'm really basically...
And then I said I had a one-on-one interview with Dr. Douglas, with Mr. Amory, with Dr. Simmons, etc., etc., etc.
Well, I'm talking mainly about a public debate between 2 running candidates on the island of Nevis. I'm not...
When you say a public debate, you mean like somebody say in the park?
Not necessarily in the park.
So what you mean, when you say a public debate, what you mean? When I said that they debated, I'm talking about on the radio station?
Okay, a debate between 2 political parties, leaders, individuals, candidates, so that people could listen on radio.
Well, work with me. I was just correcting the record that you suggested it never happened.
In Nevis. I'm talking about Nevis.
I had a debate with Mr. Parry and Mr. Emery.
Okay, okay.
And you know, unfortunately sometimes also, well, I don't fault people, but people make statements, sweeping statements as if it's the gospel truth, when it is that they're not well informed.
Can you try to get one between our candidates today, or any time the president...
Work with me, caller. We're always trying. We can't make people do things. And everybody knows that the standard and the level that we operate. And when we do that, right, we don't cut no slack. We do it on behalf of the public, and if people don't want to do it, you know, we can't make them do it. To borrow Edric's term, are you following me?
I'm following.
Okay. Go ahead. I just wanted to correct the record with that, but if you have another point, you can go ahead with it.
It would have been interesting to have a debate between 2 running candidates here in Nevis.
Yes, and the other thing too, you know, we must appreciate that these persons who are running for these offices will end up at the top offices of the land. And then you ask yourself, why do people have to run behind them, or I have to beg them and say please and stuff like that and so on and so forth? Of course you try, but they should work with us too. You agree with that?
Of course.
Okay.
We need to have we need to have debates between candidates.
Okay. All right.
Webbo,
Yes.
I prefer my statement based on the 2 governors who were, or the 2 candidates who were running for governor in the state of Arizona. And
let me get this, Mr. Stanley. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hey guys, Carl Brown here again. You know how beautiful and lovely it would be to see whether the whole NRP team, the whole new party, and the whole CCM in Grove Park on the same stage, and each candidate stepped up to tumult, and you have a moderator ask them questions where the public is sitting and listening, because remember you have new voters, you have undecided, you have the common regular voters. You know, interesting that will be that everybody sits there and that and national radio and TV, internet gone all over the world to see Nevis debate live in Grove Park, all the parties, all the candidates, same thing in St. Kitts. You know, amazing, and what level that our politics and our political arena will rise to see all 3 parties in the stadium in Warner Park, and the public is there sitting in the stadium and listening debate with a moderator asking them important questions.
Okay, caller.
That the public want to hear.
All right. I think we got the point. I think a lot of people are sharing that view as well.
No, and the last thing.
Yes.
I hope that after this election will be the last time that the Honorable Mark Grant will walk around with the election date in the pocket. We want an election date in St. Kitts and in Nevis for every election. We don't want no more prime minister or premier walking around with the election date in the pocket. We must set an official election date. Nobody checks with the pants down.
Okay. Caller, we out of time. We out of time. We got you. Yes.
There was an election in Arizona. The two candidates were running for the governorship, and one was proposed by Trump, propelled by Trump, and the other was seemingly cold but effective. Didn't agree to a debate. They never debated, but the candidate who was pushing for the debate lost. So the caller who called just now from the United States, seemingly, and allowing a ton of bricks to come down on me, is dead wrong. Webbo.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I said, I'm coming to you now, one of the things I said earlier, Mr. Stanley, was that sometimes you don't get into particular arenas until you're well researched, you have your information, and so that you don't have to keep coming back. Go ahead, Naya, quickly.
I just wish the public can be fed in a structured way, like a debate, and they could be opinionated by such debate.
Okay.
Because otherwise, it's.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening.
Hello. You have a half a minute.
Okay. No debate can happen. It's called political maturity. We ain't ready. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now you got the last word.
Well, I encourage everyone to come out and vote, and as much as possible encourage the candidate in your area to advocate for a debate. People need to hear, their opinion on matters going forward. It's very difficult to assess what each side is saying when no one comes together in a structured debate and express their views on serious issues.
That's the last word. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Talk That Get Results. You all have a wonderful evening.
Views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of News Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertiser.